Do not be alarmed, Jesus says. Do not be alarmed when you hear of wars and rumors of wars. Do not be alarmed. Really, Jesus? Really? I don't know about you, but to me, it feels like the alarm bells are blaring all around us. Does it feel that way? Amen, sister, I hear. We are still reeling from the most divisive election season in my lifetime. And the future of our nation is at stake. These are scary times. And when I read scriptures like today's gospel lesson, these apocalyptic texts, if you will, that talk about destruction and the end of the world, my initial reaction is most certainly a scared one. And I think about this gospel. It was written by Mark around the year 70, and it was written around the time of the destruction of the temple. And Mark's readers, those original readers and hearers of this, had plenty of reason to be alarmed by wars and rumors of war. And yet, Jesus tells them, and Jesus tells us, do not be alarmed. He's reminding them, and he's reminding us that we are not alone. And he is offering hope that this isn't the end. Hope that this isn't the end, but a new beginning. He talks about the birthing of new life. He's describing this movement toward wholeness, toward fullness, toward completion. This is a promise that we need to hear these days when it feels like everything is coming apart at the seams. Today's gospel lection actually overflows with good news. May not sound like that at first, but it does actually overflow with good news. Yes, it's difficult, it's challenging, but it's worth our attention. It's worth our effort. This is a gospel that's about hope. It's a gospel about opportunities and possibilities. It's a gospel about finding meaning and new life. It's a gospel about your future and my future. Yes, we often wonder, we often worry, we even become alarmed about our future and the future of the whole world. But I have come to realize that when I become alarmed about the future, I'm not really focused on the unknown or what is yet to come. I realize that I'm actually focused on what is known and what is happening in the present time. Because I want to know if the temples that I have built will stand the test of time. Will they hold up? Will my relationships stand? Will they last? Will all of my accomplishments continue to give me identity and purpose and meaning and security? Or at least give me some kind of numbing illusion of those things? Will the systems that I have created for my life, for my well-being, for my happiness, will those things remain intact? Are the foundations of my life stable and strong enough to last. In other words, I'm focused on those large stones and those large buildings in my life. So when I hear Jesus say things like, not one stone will be left upon another, that all of it will be thrown down, I get a little bit anxious. I start to twitch a little bit. Maybe you do too. Maybe that's your experience also. Jesus says that those very things that I am most focused on are going to come down. And when I hear that, I can't help but wonder if I've actually missed the whole point, or I've been distracted from what really matters, from the new life that is waiting and wanting to be birthed from me. So maybe that is what is happening with the disciple who says, look, teacher, look at what large stones, look at those large buildings. Maybe he's missed the point. Maybe he has distracted himself from what really matters, and he's calling for attention. And I think that this is actually a possibility for a couple of reasons, okay? First, what this disciple says doesn't really make sense. Surely, this was not the first time that this disciple, who was an adult Jewish man, had been to or had seen the temple. It could not have been the first time that he saw or had been to the temple. He probably grew up going to the temple. He'd been to the temple with Jesus at least 2 times before this particular day, and we know that because the previous chapters in the Gospel of Mark tell us that. The large stones and the buildings of the temple certainly were not new to him. It wasn't the first time that he was seeing that. He saw all of that before. Secondly, there's this disconnect between what he says and what had happened actually just right before this particular passage. In the previous chapter, in Mark chapter 12, the text that Pastor Ken preached on last Sunday, Jesus and his disciples were at the temple where they were sitting opposite of the temple treasury. And they were watching people put money into the temple treasury. Many people, rich people, put large sums of money into the temple treasury. But this poor widow came along and she put in a penny. She put in all that she had. And Jesus said to his disciples, he said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of those who are contributing to the treasury." And with those words, Jesus began to crack the mortar and the stones of power, the stones of wealth and prestige and reputation and position and security. This is where that separation started or began. Jesus holds up the widow as an example. Now, she's probably not the example that the disciples or that we would hold up. She has no wealth, she has no power, she has no position, she has no security. She's the one that we often will overlook or ignore and sometimes even abuse. And the first thing, actually, the only thing the disciple says in response to that is, "Wow, look at that big building. They don't get it. They just don't get it. And if we're honest, we don't either. I wonder if this disciple was just trying to change the subject. He's uncomfortable. And so he tries to change the subject, or he tries to distract himself from what Jesus has just said or called him to do. Have you ever done that? I know that I have. We change the subject, or we try to distract ourselves so that we don't have to deal with those vulnerable or those painful or those broken parts of our lives. And I wonder if this disciple, as they are looking at those large stones and large buildings, so that he doesn't have to look at himself in light of the widow. So he doesn't have to look at himself in light of the widow. I wonder if he feels that those large stones and those large buildings of his life are beginning to shift or separate. Have you ever felt that shift or separation in your life, where things are uncomfortable? You're not standing on that firm ground that you used to be standing on? I know I felt that when my mom died last year. And I remember my whole temple coming down the first time that I applied for commissioning as an elder in the United Methodist Church, and I was told, not yet. Not yet. I feel that separation, that crumbling, every time I tell myself a lie about myself rather than face the truth about myself. I feel it when the values that I claim for my life are not actually what I wind up living out. It happens when I use all of my accomplishments to avoid facing how I need to change. It's all of those times when I'm looking on the outside of myself instead of paying attention to what's happening on the inside. It's there whenever I refuse to see or to acknowledge or receive the widow and her way of life in my life. That separation shows up in all of my attempts to ignore, as we might say, the elephant in the room. And it separates me from God and myself. And I end up denying myself the life that I say that I really want. And it's not just a separation. Somewhere in that separation, there's usually some kind of conflict or division within myself or between me and another person. And that's a difficult and uncomfortable place to be, right? You've probably been there too. I bet you can relate to all of that. Jesus says, this sounds like war and rumors of war. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes, there will be famines. And when you think about it, every one of those images is an image of separation. Nation separated from nation, kingdom separated from kingdom, the earth separating from itself in an earthquake, stomach separating from food in a famine. Even the widow is an image of separation. She's separated from her husband and the life that she used to live. Those images are not only what's happening all around us, but they are what's happening within us. It's showing us and it's telling us something that we don't want to see or to hear or deal with. It's too frightening, it's too painful, it's uncertain. But what if they are separations that are not there to destroy? What if they are not separations that destroy? What if instead they are separations that create and give birth? What if they are an opening? What if they're a space for something new to come to life? Jesus is never more compassionate than he is during these times. He speaks to the disciples there with such tenderness and with reassurance. Do not be alarmed, he says. This must take place. These are but the beginnings of the birth pangs. It's as if he's saying, don't worry. This is normal. It's normal. You're going to be okay. I'm the midwife, and I will get you through this. You're not alone. So what about our lives today? What would it be like to stop changing the subject or to stop distracting ourselves? What if we actually faced the elephant in the room and we said, we need to talk, we have some things that we have to work out? What are the large stones? What are the large buildings in our lives that are being thrown down or that need to be thrown down? I wonder what would come of all of that. What would it ask of us? What would it offer us? What might be born? What new thing might be born out of all of that? What if in those times when it feels like our lives are shifting and separating and everything is being thrown down, what if instead we would trust the divine midwife and push a little? Push a little. Push with faith, push with hope, push with love, push in anticipation of something new happening. Jesus says, do not be alarmed. These things are going to happen, but this is not the end. It is the beginning of something new. And you are not alone. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? I'm seeing some nods of heads. Some maybe not so sure yet. Well, I invite you to join me in affirming our faith together. The United Church of Canada has this beautiful statement of faith. It's actually found in our hymnals, number 883, but the words are also going to be up on the screen. And I invite you to read through this with me and ponder and pray these words as an affirmation of our faith in a God who does not leave us alone. Please join me. We are not alone. We live in God's world. We believe in God, who has created and is creating, who has come in Jesus, the Word made flesh, to reconcile and make new, who works in us and others by the Spirit. We trust God, We are called to be the church, to celebrate God's presence, to live with respect in creation, to love and serve others, to seek justice and resist evil, to proclaim Jesus, crucified and risen, our judge and our hope. In life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be to God. Amen. May it be so. May it be so. Amen.